I never thought that at 72 years old, I'd have to worry about poison in my champagne flute. Throughout my life, I'd fought against ruthless competitors in the jewelry business, negotiated with difficult suppliers, and survived the loss of my beloved husband. But nothing prepared me for discovering that my own family was plotting my death. My name is Evelyn Thornwood, and until recently, I was the owner of one of the most successful jewelry stores in the Northeast. Thornwood Gems had been my life for 40 years, starting as a small boutique that I opened with my late husband Howard, and growing into a chain with 7 stores in the most prestigious shopping districts. When I finally decided to sell it for $30 million, I thought my life would become peaceful, that I could enjoy my Victorian house in the countryside, read the books I'd accumulated over the years, and spend time with my family. How wrong I was. It all began with the retirement party that my son Nathan and his wife Rebecca insisted on organizing. "Mom, you've worked your whole life. You deserve a special celebration," Nathan said with his brown eyes, so similar to his father's. I didn't see anything suspicious at that moment. After all, what's strange about a son wanting to celebrate his mother's achievements? The party would be held at my home, a beautiful property outside the city with a garden that Howard and I had designed together decades ago. The roses still bloomed every spring, reminding me of his presence even 12 years after his passing. It was a place full of memories, where I had raised Nathan, where I had mourned my sorrows and celebrated my victories. That Friday evening, my house filled with about 30 people, old business associates, neighbors, and of course, family. Rebecca had decorated everything with impeccable taste that surprised me. I'd always seen her more interested in her shopping trips and social media presence than in organizing family events. She had even hired a professional bartender to serve drinks. "Nothing's too good for you, Evelyn," she told me with a perfect smile, squeezing my arm with her freshly manicured nails in a manicure that probably cost what an average family spends on groceries for a week. Her sudden interest in pleasing me should have alerted me. I was chatting with my former business partner about market trends when I saw it. Rebecca was standing by the drinks table, nervously looking around, before taking a small vial from her designer purse. With quick movements, she emptied the contents into a specific glass, the one with a small chip on the rim, the glass I always used at family celebrations. Time seemed to stand still. My heart pounded as I watched my daughter-in-law poison the glass meant for me. My blood froze in my veins, but decades of tough negotiations had taught me to maintain my composure. I smiled, nodded at what my partner was saying, but my eyes never left Rebecca. She picked up the marked glass and began walking toward me with an expression of false concern. "Evelyn, you look tired," she said, offering me the glass. "Have some champagne? You've earned it." I took the glass, thanked her with a smile, and waited. 10 minutes later, when she was distracted showing off her new diamond bracelet to the neighbors, I discreetly switched my glass with that of Constance. Her mother, who was nearby, a bit lost without a drink in her hand. Constance, always somewhat absent-minded, took the glass without thinking twice. Did I feel guilty about putting Rebecca's mother in danger? Perhaps I should have, but at that moment, survival instinct was stronger. Besides, I needed evidence of what was happening, and I knew that if I simply discarded the drink, I would never be able to prove what I had seen. What happened next confirmed my worst suspicions. In less than 5 minutes, Constance began praising the peculiar taste of the champagne, wondering if I had ordered it from somewhere special. And then, without warning, she collapsed on the marble floor of my kitchen. Her body convulsed as foam began to form at the corners of her mouth. My house filled with screams. Rebecca shrieked with a performance of anguish that almost seemed convincing. Almost. The problem with pretending to be horrified is that real panic and fake panic are easily distinguishable when you know what details to look for. "What happened?" Nathan demanded, pushing his way through the crowd that had formed around Constance. His face was pale, but I could notice something else in his expression, a quick glance toward Rebecca that lasted barely an instant. Too long. I don't know, sobbed Rebecca, grabbing my arm. She just collapsed. One minute she was fine, and the next, she gestured vaguely at her mother, who was now unconscious, but still breathing. The paramedics arrived in minutes, working quickly to stabilize Constance as they lifted her onto a stretcher. While watching the scene, I found myself analyzing my son's face. 35 years of motherhood had taught me to read his moods like the weather, and at that moment I saw him as a man watching his meticulously arranged plans crumble in real time. Which hospital are they taking her to? I asked the lead paramedic. Riverside Memorial. Are you a relative? A close friend, I replied, glancing sideways at Rebecca, who was too busy hyperventilating to notice. I'll follow in my car. Nathan immediately stepped forward. Mom, you don't need to do that. We'll handle it. Stay here and take care of the party. How thoughtful. Keeping the witness at home while he figured out what had gone wrong with their little murder plan. Nonsense, I answered firmly. Constance is practically family. I'm going with her. I grabbed my purse and keys before anyone could object. Although my knees weren't what they used to be, I moved with the determination of a woman on a mission, because now I had one. To discover exactly what my son and his wife were plotting, and more importantly, why they wanted to see me dead. At the hospital, I made sure to stay close enough to overhear the medical staff's conversations. Constance's condition was recorded as acute poisoning of unknown origin, but I heard the doctor mention something about plant alkaloids to a nurse, a rather specific poison, which made me think someone had researched well about toxins difficult to detect. Rebecca paced back and forth in the waiting room, her designer heels clicking against the floor like a metronome, marking the rhythm of her anxiety. Nathan remained rigid in an uncomfortable plastic chair, his phone constantly vibrating with messages he seemed reluctant to answer. This is horrible, Rebecca repeated for the 5th time. Poor Mom. I don't understand how something like this could happen. I patted her shoulder with fake compassion. These things are often a mystery, dear. I'm sure the doctors will discover the cause. Then I added with apparent casualness, you know what? It's a good thing she didn't drink much of that champagne. She barely had a few sips before collapsing. Rebecca's step faltered, barely perceptibly. Champagne? Do you think the champagne caused this? Oh, I'm sure it's nothing, I answered, waving my hand as if dismissing an unfounded comment. Just an old woman's mind looking for connections where there are none. But Rebecca's face turned paler, and her hands trembled slightly as she picked up her coffee cup. Nathan was following our conversation with the attention of a hawk watching its prey. 3 hours later, a doctor came out to tell us that Constance was stable, though she should remain under observation that night. The tests didn't give clear results, he said, but whatever she had ingested was slowly being eliminated from her system. Can we see her? Rebecca asked. Family only, and she's sedated. Better come back tomorrow? As we left the hospital, Nathan walked me to my car. The night was cool, and the full moon illuminated the parking lot with a silvery light that made the shadows seem darker and more threatening. Mom, why don't you stay with us tonight? After what happened, I'd feel better if you weren't alone. What a considerate gesture, especially considering that Constance's little medical emergency surely had them wondering if I suspected something. And the answer was yes. Of course I did. But they didn't need to know that yet. That's very kind of you, son, but I'll be fine, I told him, giving him a kiss on the cheek. Remember I installed that new security system last month? I feel completely protected. I got into my car and watched in the rearview mirror as Nathan and Rebecca had a heated discussion in the parking lot. She gestured with her hands, clearly upset, while he tried to calm her down. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I didn't need to be a mind reader to know they were arguing about the failure of their plan. On my way home, my mind was working at full speed. I needed to find out what was going on, why my own family wanted to eliminate me, and more importantly, I needed to protect myself. Because if they had tried once, they would surely try again. As I entered my empty, now silent house after the party, I felt a shiver run down my spine. This place that had always been my refuge suddenly seemed hostile, full of shadows and potential dangers. I poured myself a glass of brandy from a new bottle that I opened myself, and sat in my study to think. Why would Nathan and Rebecca want me dead? The most obvious answer was money. $30 million was a sum that could tempt even the noblest souls, and my daughter-in-law had never shown signs of being particularly concerned with ethics. But there was something more, something that didn't quite fit. If they simply wanted to inherit my fortune, why now? My will already named Nathan as my sole heir. All they had to do was wait. Unless they needed the money urgently. I decided it was time to find out exactly what my son and his wife's financial situation was. And for that, I needed professional help. The next morning, I woke up early after a restless night. The first thing I did was call Oliver Maxwell, my lawyer and friend for more than 20 years. Oliver had been by my side during the expansion of my business, during the painful loss of my husband, and had always offered me solid, loyal advice. "Oliver, I need to see you today," I told him bluntly when he answered the phone. "It's a delicate matter." There was a pause on the line. "Are you okay, Evelyn?" "I'm not sure," I replied honestly. "But I hope to find out soon." We agreed to meet at his office at 11. While I was getting ready to leave, the phone rang. It was Rebecca, with a voice full of concern that sounded as fake as her eyelash extensions. "Evelyn, how are you? I couldn't sleep all night thinking about you. After what happened with Mom, I'm worried that maybe the food or drinks had something bad in them." "You didn't feel sick, did you?" How thoughtful. Checking if her poison had somehow reached its destination in an unexpected way. "Not at all, dear. I feel perfectly fine." "Did you hear anything more about Constance?" "The doctors say she could go home today. They think she might have eaten something that didn't agree with her before the party. You know how she is with her medications. She probably took something on an empty stomach." Constance Parker could be many things, but careless with her medications was not one of them. She organized her pills as if it were a military operation, with labeled bottles and reminders on her cell phone. "What a relief," I replied. "I was worried it might have been something at the party. That would have been terrible." "Oh, not at all," Rebecca immediately replied. "The doctors were very clear. It wasn't food poisoning. It was just one of those unexplainable things that happen." Curious how quickly she wanted to cut off any inquiry about what had happened in my house. Almost as if she feared someone might analyze the champagne that was left. After hanging up, I walked to the kitchen and stared at the bottle that Rebecca had opened at the party. It was still 3/4 full, resting innocently on my counter. What would happen if I sent it to be analyzed in a laboratory? I didn't need evidence for myself. I knew what I had seen, but perhaps the evidence would be useful later. That morning, before leaving for Oliver's office, I carefully stored the champagne bottle in a bag. I had a feeling it might be important in the days to come. Oliver's office was in a modern building downtown, his office on the 15th floor, with a view of the Central Park. Lots of dark wood and leather armchairs designed to inspire confidence. I had always felt safe there, surrounded by law books and the subtle scent of an expensive cologne. "Tell me everything," Oliver said after his secretary brought us coffee and closed the door. I related every detail of the party, Constance's collapse, the hospital visit, and the strange conversations with Nathan and Rebecca afterwards. Oliver listened in silence, occasionally taking notes in his notebook. "Are you sure about what you saw?" he asked when I finished. "As sure as I am sitting in this chair," I replied. Oliver leaned back, gently tapping his lips with his pen. "The problem is proving intent. Rebecca could say she was adding something harmless to the champagne. A supplement, a flavoring, something personal. Without analyzing what was left in the bottle, we don't have evidence of attempted murder." "Then let's do the test," I said, pulling the bottle from my bag. "If we find poison, it proves she tried to kill someone. But even then, we can't prove she wanted to kill you specifically." Oliver replied. "She could claim the target was her own mother for insurance money, or that it was meant for someone else. That possibility hadn't occurred to me. So even with proven poison, they could get away with an attempted murder charge. What do you recommend I do? I asked. Oliver opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. His face had become more serious. Evelyn, there's something else we need to consider, he said with a grave expression. If they're capable of killing you for your money, they might also try other avenues, challenging your legal capacity, for example. On what grounds? Your age, that you live alone, the stress of selling your company. If they manage to establish a pattern of deterioration in your judgment or mental faculties, they could petition for legal guardianship over you. Suddenly, I saw the complete picture, and it was terrifying. Once they gain control over the person, they also take control of their assets, I murmured. Exactly. I shuddered as I realized the implications. They didn't just want my money, they had developed a complete plan to take it from me, and they were willing to go as far as murder if necessary. What do I need to do? I asked, feeling a cold determination forming inside me. First, we're going to document your current mental state. I'm going to arrange for you to be evaluated by a geriatric psychiatrist, someone specialized in assessing the capacity of older clients. That needs to be recorded immediately. Oliver smiled, and there was something fierce in his expression. And then we'll see how to get creative with your estate planning. If Nathan and Rebecca want to play with your money, let them do it, but by your rules. We spent the next 2 hours reviewing options, trusts that would complicate any attempt to challenge my decisions, medical directives that clearly specified who could and could not make decisions for me, financial arrangements that would trigger automatic audits if someone tried to tamper with my accounts. In the end, Oliver looked at me seriously. There's something else. From what you've told me, you should think about your personal safety. If they've already tried once, they'll do it again, and more carefully. I remembered Nathan's insistence that I stay at his house that night. What would have happened if I had accepted? Perhaps I would have been a grieving widow, with a heart broken by the sudden illness of a friend, taking a sleeping pill to rest. So easy for an older woman to make a mistake and take too many pills. What do you suggest? Security cameras, motion sensors, a panic button system. I know a company that protects high net worth individuals. High net worth individuals? That's what I was now. Apparently rich enough to be worth killing. As I drove back home, I warily observed each car in the rearview mirror, wondering if I was being followed. It was probably paranoia, but as my husband used to say, it's not paranoia if they're really out to get you. When I got home, I found a surprise. The doorbell rang shortly after I settled in the kitchen to make some tea. Through the peephole, I saw Constance Parker standing on my porch, pale but steady, hugging a small purse as if it were her lifeline. Evelyn, I need to talk to you, she said bluntly when I opened the door. It's about what happened last night. I invited her in and made her some tea, observing her face for after effects of the poisoning. She looked tired, but lucid, certainly much clearer than her daughter wanted me to believe. Rebecca told me I had a reaction to a medication, Constance said as she sat in my living room. But I haven't taken anything more than vitamins for years. What do you remember about the party? I asked cautiously. Everything, until I started feeling dizzy. I remember the champagne tasted strange, bitter, almost metallic. She paused and looked me straight in the eye. And I also remember seeing Rebecca near the drinks table doing something with a small bottle. I felt my pulse quicken. What kind of bottle? One like those dropper bottles, the ones used for essential oils or other things. Constance's hands trembled a bit as she put her cup on the table. Evelyn, I think my daughter tried to poison you. Why would you think that? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Constance's laugh was bitter, because she's been talking about your money for months. About how unfair it is that you have so much while they struggle. About how much easier their life would be if something happened to you. The pieces were starting to fit together. Did she say anything more specific? Last month she asked me if I thought you had updated your will. She seemed very concerned about Nathan's inheritance. Constance held my gaze. Evelyn, I think they've been planning this for a long time. I made a decision. Constance deserved to know the truth, and I needed an ally who had witnessed her daughter's behavior firsthand. Constance. I saw Rebecca put something in my champagne glass. I switched the drinks on purpose. The color drained from the woman's face. She tried to kill you, and I almost died in your place. We sat in silence for a few seconds, absorbing the magnitude of what had happened. What are you going to do? She finally asked. I'm going to give them exactly what they want. I replied with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Just not in the way they expect to receive it. Constance raised an eyebrow. What does that mean? It means that your daughter and my son are about to discover that some games have much higher stakes than they imagined. After Constance left, I made a call to another old business contact. Samantha Reed had a private investigation agency specializing in corporate espionage and background checks. We had worked together several times over the years when I needed information about potential partners. Evelyn Thornwood, Samantha's voice sounded warm on the phone. I heard about the sale of your business. Congratulations on your retirement. Thank you, Samantha. I need a favor, a personal one. What kind of favor? I need to know everything about my son's finances. Bank accounts, credit cards, loans, investments. Everything. There was a pause. Evelyn, are you sure? Sometimes information about family can be uncomfortable. I'm sure. Give me 48 hours. While Samantha worked her magic, I put the next part of my plan into motion. I called Nathan and asked him to meet me for lunch at our usual restaurant, the same one where we had celebrated his graduation from architecture school. His wedding, the birth of his daughter Zoe, a place full of family memories that now seemed to belong to another life. Nathan arrived nervous, checking his phone every few minutes. How are you feeling, Mom? You sounded upset when you called. I took my time to answer, observing my son. His hair was starting to show gray at the temples, and he had new wrinkles around his eyes. He was still handsome, but stress had left its mark. I've been thinking about what you and Rebecca said about my safety, I finally said. About planning for the future. His face lit up. And I think you're right. I think it's time to make some changes. Nathan leaned forward with barely contained enthusiasm. What kind of changes? Well, I was looking into Sunset Gardens. That place you mentioned. I called them this morning. That's great news, Mom. I think you're really going to like it there. If they have a vacancy, I said with feigned concern. But we need to reserve it quickly. There's another person interested in the same unit. How quickly? Next week I would have to pay the entrance fee by Friday to secure it. Nathan's excitement was palpable. I could almost see the gears turning in his head, calculating how much time was left before he could get his hands on my money. That's not a problem, right? You have the money from the sale? Of course. It's just that, well, it's a big step. I thought maybe you and Rebecca could help me with the paperwork. Make sure I'm making the right decision. Of course, we'd be happy to help you. I smiled at my son, memorizing his face. In a few days, that eager expression would transform into something quite different. There's just one more detail, I added casually. The residence requires all residents to have a registered power of attorney. Someone who can make decisions if they become unable to do so. I was hoping you would be willing to handle that. Of course, Mom. Whatever you need. Perfect. Nathan thought he was manipulating me into giving him control over my money. Instead, he was walking straight into my trap. The next day, I received an unexpected visit. The doorbell rang while I was reviewing the documents. Oliver had sent me. Through the security monitor I had recently installed, I saw Zoe, my 16-year-old granddaughter, standing at my door. Grandma, she exclaimed when I opened up, throwing herself into my arms. She had always been an affectionate child, and seeing her reminded me of everything that was at stake. Dad told me you might be moving to a retirement home. Is that true? I took her to the kitchen and made her hot chocolate, like when she was little. Zoe had inherited her mother's beauty, but she had my eyes, green with small golden flecks, and some of my character too, that determination that had taken me from a small jewelry shop to a successful chain. I'm considering some options, I replied carefully. I didn't want to lie to her, but I also couldn't tell her my suspicions about her parents. But you promised you'd teach me wood carving this summer, she protested. And you said we could go through those old photo albums of when you and Grandpa were young. I felt a lump in my throat. In the midst of this dark situation, my granddaughter was still a ray of light, reminding me that not everything in my family was corrupted by greed. And we will, I assured her. Whatever happens, I'll always have time for you. Zoe smiled, but then her expression turned serious. Grandma, are you okay? Really, I mean? You don't seem like yourself. What could I tell her? That I suspected her parents had tried to kill me? That I was planning to set a trap that would probably send them to jail? I'm going through some changes, I said finally. Retirement hasn't been exactly what I expected. Zoe took my hand. Do you miss the jewelry store? It's not that. I sighed, deciding to share part of the truth. Sometimes, when you reach a certain age and have a certain amount of money, people see you differently. Not as a person, but as a walking wallet. Zoe completed, always so direct. Her eyes sparkled with a wisdom beyond her years. I've heard Mom and Dad talking about your money. I don't like how they sound when they do. I felt a chill. How much did my granddaughter know? What do you mean exactly? I asked cautiously. Zoe shrugged. I don't know. They're always talking about when they'll be able to access your money, or what they'll do when they have it. Mom wants to buy a beach house, and Dad says he could save his architecture firm. It's like they're already counting on it. This confirmed my suspicions. Nathan's financial situation must be worse than I had imagined. Grandma, Zoe continued with a seriousness unusual for her age, don't sign anything for them. Not without reading it first, and maybe showing the papers to your lawyer. I looked at her with pride and sadness. My granddaughter had a sense of justice that unfortunately she hadn't inherited from her parents. I promise you. After Zoe left, I sat thinking about our conversation. What would happen to her after what I was about to do? I made a decision. Whatever happened, I would make sure to protect her future. Samantha called Thursday morning with her report. I sat in my study, listening with growing astonishment, as she detailed the financial situation of Nathan and Rebecca. It was worse than I had imagined. Their level of indebtedness is at the limit, Samantha said. The house has been refinanced 3 times. They have 2 mortgages plus a home equity line of credit that's already maxed out. Credit card debts exceeding 800. How have they been paying all this? I asked.
Rarely.
Nathan's business has been operating at a loss for 2 years. They've been using credit cards to pay off other credit cards. Classic signs of financial desperation. Anything else? Rebecca took out a life insurance policy on you 6 months ago. $500,000 with her as the beneficiary. My blood ran cold. How is that legal? She claimed insurable interest as your daughter-in-law and caregiver. The insurance company probably assumed Nathan was the real beneficiary, and Rebecca was just handling the paperwork. A life insurance policy. They had been planning my death for months, not days. Is there anything more? Yes, Evelyn. Nathan has been making regular payments to someone called Dr. Gregory Andrews, a geriatric psychiatrist. For what? I'm not sure yet, but the payments started 3 months ago. Small amounts, like consultation fees. Dr. Gregory Andrews. I made a note to ask Oliver about him. The picture was becoming clearer, and it was darker than I had imagined. That afternoon, Nathan and Rebecca arrived at my house with a briefcase full of Sunset Gardens documents. They spread the papers on the dining room table like generals planning a battle. This is the admission contract, Rebecca explained, pointing to a thick stack of papers. And this is the financial declaration form. It lists all your assets, so they can calculate your monthly fees. It's very thorough, I observed, reviewing the documents. They wanted access to all my accounts, all my investments. The power of attorney paperwork is here, Nathan added, sliding another document toward me. It's pretty standard. It just gives me the authority to handle your financial affairs if you can't. I read the power of attorney document carefully. It was much broader than what Nathan had indicated. With this signature, he would have immediate access to my bank accounts, investment portfolios, and the authority to make any financial decision on my behalf. This seems quite extensive, I told him. Do I really need to give you this much authority? Mom, it's just a precautionary measure, Nathan said. The place requires it. And honestly, at your age, it's good to have someone younger handling the complexities of finances. There was that phrase again, at your age. As if turning 70 automatically made me incapable of managing my own money. What if I change my mind about Sunset Gardens? Can this be revoked? I asked. Nathan and Rebecca exchanged a quick glance. Well, technically, yes, Rebecca said, but the place has strict policies about residents who try to leave. There are medical evaluations, waiting periods. It's complicated. I bet it was. Once I signed these papers and moved to Sunset Gardens, they would control my money. And it could be very difficult for me to leave, especially if Dr. Gregory Andrews was willing to evaluate my mental competence the way they wanted. I need to think about this overnight, I said, gathering the papers. It's a big decision. Nathan's face fell. Mom, remember we need to submit everything tomorrow if you want to secure the unit. I understand. I'll give you an answer in the morning. After they left, I immediately called Oliver. What can you tell me about Dr. Gregory Andrews? Andrews is a geriatric psychiatrist specializing in competency evaluations for elderly patients. Oliver replied. Why? My son has been paying him for consultations. There was a long pause. Evelyn, Andrews has a reputation for being accommodating to families concerned about an elderly relative's judgment. His evaluations tend to support whatever outcome the family is seeking. You mean he's willing to declare people incompetent for money? I couldn't say that officially, but I've seen several cases where families use Andrews' evaluations to gain control over an elderly person's assets. The picture was becoming clear. Nathan and Rebecca weren't just after my money. They had developed a complete plan to take it from me, taking me to Sunset Gardens under the guise of safety and care, using the power of attorney to access my accounts. If I resisted or tried to leave, having Dr. Andrews declare me mentally incompetent. It was actually quite clever. If I hadn't seen Rebecca poison the champagne, I might have fallen right into their trap. Oliver, I need you to prepare something for me, I told him, and I need it ready by tomorrow morning. What kind of something? The kind of something that will teach my family a lesson they'll never forget. Friday morning dawned gray and drizzling. The kind of weather that made everything seem somber, perfect for what I had planned. Nathan and Rebecca arrived punctually at 9, both dressed as if attending a business meeting, which in a way they were. Have you decided, Mom? Nathan asked, settling in the living room with barely contained excitement. I have. I pulled out the Sunset Gardens papers, already signed and notarized. I think you're right. It's time to start this new chapter. Rebecca's expression of relief was evident. Oh, Evelyn, that's great. You're going to love that place. I'm sure I will. I also handed Nathan the signed power of attorney papers. My son's hands trembled as he took the documents. This is the right decision, Mom. You won't regret it. I smiled at him. I'm sure I won't. We spent the next hour going over the financial papers. Rebecca had a laptop open, typing quickly as I gave her account numbers and access codes. Every few minutes, she and Nathan exchanged meaningful glances, like children who couldn't believe Christmas had come early. There's one more thing, I said when we finished. I need to sign some additional papers with my lawyer before the transfer is official. Something about the tax implications of large financial transactions. Sure, Nathan said. Do you want us to take you to his office? Actually, he's coming here. Oliver should be arriving any moment. Just then, the doorbell rang. But it wasn't Oliver Maxwell standing at my door. It was Detective Meredith Collins, from the local police department, accompanied by a colleague I didn't recognize. Mrs. Thornwood? I'm Detective Collins. We need to talk to you about an incident that occurred at your house this week. Nathan stood up quickly. What kind of incident? A suspected poisoning, Detective Collins said, looking between Nathan and Rebecca. We understand there was a medical emergency here during a party. Rebecca's face turned very pale. That was my mother. She had a reaction to her medication. The doctors said it wasn't serious. Actually, Mrs. Harmon, that's not what the hospital reported. Detective Collins pulled out a notebook. Toxicology results show your mother ingested a concentrated amount of oleander extract. That's not a medication, it's a deadly poison. The silence in my living room was deafening. We also analyzed the champagne left over from that night, the detective continued. The opened bottle from the party contained the same oleander extract. Someone had deliberately poisoned that champagne. Nathan was looking at Rebecca with an expression of growing horror. Rebecca, what did you do? I didn't do anything. Rebecca's voice was full of panic. This is insane. Why would I poison my own mother? That's what we're trying to find out, Detective Collins said. Especially since the champagne glass with the highest concentration of poison was originally intended for Mrs. Thornwood. Rebecca looked like she might faint. Nathan slumped back into his chair, his face pale. Is there anything else? I said quietly. Detective, show them the insurance policy. Detective Collins nodded and pulled out another document. Mrs. Harmon, we discovered that 6 months ago you took out a life insurance policy for $500,000 on Mrs. Thornwood. That gives you a clear financial motive for murder. This is crazy, Rebecca whispered. Evelyn, tell them this is crazy. I looked at my daughter-in-law, this woman who pretended to care about me while planning my death. I saw you put the poison in my champagne glass, Rebecca. I deliberately switched our drinks. Nathan's head snapped up. You knew? You knew she was trying to poison you? I've known for days. I also know about your financial situation, about Dr. Andrews, about your plan to have me declared incompetent. I know everything. The power of attorney papers slipped from Nathan's numb fingers. Mom, I didn't know about the poison. I swear to God I didn't know she was going to try to kill you. But you knew everything else, didn't you? The retirement home, the power of attorney, the plan to take my money. Nathan's silence was answer enough. Detective Collins stepped forward. Rebecca Harmon, you're under arrest for attempted murder. As they put the handcuffs on her, Rebecca turned toward me with eyes full of rage. You think you're so clever, don't you? You have no idea what you've done. Actually, I said, I know exactly what I've done. After the police took Rebecca away, Nathan remained seated in my living room like a man in shock. He stared at the power of attorney papers scattered on the floor, occasionally running his hands through his hair. She said it was just about putting you in a safe place, he finally said. She said you were becoming forgetful, making bad decisions. She convinced me that you needed protection. And the money? Was that about protection too? Nathan's face crumpled. We're so in debt, Mom. The business is bankrupt. We're behind on everything. Rebecca said that if something happened to you, naturally, we would inherit enough to start over. But she never said anything about. He made a gesture of desperation. About murder. I thought we were just planning for the inevitable. Arranging everything for when, you died of natural causes. How convenient that those natural causes needed a little help to arrive. Nathan looked at me with tears streaming down his cheeks. I'm sorry. Forgive me, Mom. I never wanted to hurt you. I studied my son's face, looking for the truth beneath the remorse. Part of me wanted to believe him. I wanted to think that Rebecca had manipulated him into this situation. But I'd been in business too long to ignore the warning signs. Nathan, show me your phone. What? Your phone. Show me your messages with Rebecca from last week. Nathan hesitated. Then he reluctantly handed me his phone. I scrolled through his messages, my heart sinking with each conversation I read. Did you talk to Mom about Sunset Gardens? Rebecca? Yes, she's considering it. Nathan. Good. The sooner we move her, the better. Rebecca. She's been asking too many questions about our finances, Nathan. What if she changes her mind? Rebecca. She won't. Not after tomorrow night. Nathan. What happens tomorrow night? Rebecca. Trust me. By Sunday she'll be begging us to take care of her. Nathan. I handed the phone back to Nathan. You knew, didn't you? Maybe not the specific method, but you knew Rebecca was planning something for the night of the party? Nathan's shoulders slumped. I thought she wanted to scare you somehow. Stage a fake break-in, or some kind of accident that would make you realize you weren't safe living alone. You thought she was going to fake an attempted murder? Not murder, just something that would convince you to move to Sunset Gardens of your own free will. The casual way he said it chilled my blood. My own son felt comfortable with the idea of terrorizing me into compliance. Nathan, there's something else you need to know, I told him. I hired a private investigator to look into your finances. His face went white. What did you find? Everything. The debt, the failing business, the fact that you've been living beyond your means for years. I pulled out Samantha's report. But there was something that particularly caught my attention. The payments to Dr. Andrews. Mom, I can explain. Can you? Because according to this, you've been paying him to consult on my case for 3 months, before you ever mentioned Sunset Gardens. Before you showed any concern about my mental state. What exactly were you consulting him about, Nathan? Nathan buried his face in his hands. Rebecca said we needed a backup plan in case you refused to sign the power of attorney voluntarily. A backup plan? Andrews agreed to evaluate you and look for signs of dementia or incompetence. Rebecca said it was just a precaution, in case you became difficult. I felt something cold settle in my chest. You were planning to have me declared incompetent from the beginning, only if necessary, only if you refused to let us help you. Help me do what, Nathan? Help me give you my money? The truth hung in the air between us. My son, the little boy I had raised, loved, and sacrificed for, was planning to destroy my independence and steal the fruits of my labor. Is there anything else? I asked quietly. What? The papers you signed today. The power of attorney I gave you. Nathan looked up hopefully. They're fake. Oliver prepared them specifically for this meeting. They give you power over a bank account that contains exactly $1. Nathan stared at me in shock. What? My real money is safely protected in trusts that you can't access. The will you were so concerned about leaves you a modest annual income, and nothing more. And if you're convicted of conspiracy in the plot to murder me with Rebecca, even that will disappear. Nathan's face crumbled. You've destroyed my life. No, Nathan, you destroyed your own life. I just made sure you couldn't destroy mine in the process. As I watched my son sitting there broken, I felt something I didn't expect. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just a deep, exhausting sadness for the man he had chosen to become. 3 months later, I sat in my garden watching the roses bloom, thinking about endings and beginnings. Rebecca had been sentenced to 15 years for attempted murder. Nathan received 3 years for conspiracy, though his lawyer managed to reduce the sentence from the original charges. Zoe, my granddaughter, had called the night before. At 16, she was already old enough to understand what her parents had done, enough to be horrified by their decisions. Grandma Evelyn, I'm so sorry, she had said, her voice broken by tears. I had no idea they were planning all this. I know, sweetheart. This isn't your fault. Can I come visit you this weekend? I know Mom and Dad are, well, but I'd like to see you. I'd love that, I told her. And I meant it. Zoe was innocent in all of this, a victim of her parents' greed as much as I was. Constance Parker had become an unexpected friend. Now we met twice a week for coffee. 2 women united by the strange experience of surviving betrayal by our own family. She was considering writing a book about elder abuse, using our story as a warning. Evelyn, Constance said during our last coffee date. I keep thinking about how close they came to getting away with it. They never had a chance, I replied. I've been dealing with people who wanted my money for 40 years. The only difference this time is that they shared my DNA. Constance laughed. Do you ever regret how it all ended up? With both of them in prison, I mean? I considered the question seriously. I did regret it. Nathan was my son, the child I had raised and loved. But he was also a man willing to destroy my life for money. I regret that it was necessary, I finally said. But I don't regret protecting myself. The doorbell interrupted my reverie in the garden. Through the security monitor, I could see Oliver Maxwell standing on my porch, with a briefcase and looking unusually pleased with himself. Oliver, what brings you by? Good news, he said, settling into my living room. The insurance company has decided not to contest Rebecca's life insurance policy. Since she was convicted of trying to murder you, they'll void the policy and return all the premiums paid. That's something, I suppose. There's more. Nathan's creditors are seizing all his assets to pay his debts. That includes the house you helped them buy. They're asking if you want to make an offer. I thought about Nathan and Rebecca's house, with its granite countertops and high ceilings. All those beautiful things they had so desperately wanted and that had driven them to desperation. No, I said. Let someone else have it. Someone who can afford it honestly. Oliver nodded and pulled out another document. The final point. The restructuring of your trust is complete. Your money is now protected for life. No one can access it without your express written consent. And if someone tries to have me declared incompetent, the trust automatically transfers to a charitable organization and an educational fund for Zoe. Thank you, Oliver, for everything. After Oliver left, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my terrace watching the sunset paint the sky in golden and pink tones. At 72, I had learned that money can bring out the best and worst in people. Unfortunately, in my own family, it brought out the worst. But I also learned something else. I was stronger than I thought, clever enough to see through their plans, tough enough to stop them, and resilient enough to build a new life. Without them, my phone vibrated with a message from Zoe. Grandma, I got accepted to the university to study law. Like you suggested. Can't wait to tell you all about it when I visit. I smiled as I wrote back. Congratulations, my love. I'm so proud of you. Perhaps that was the real victory. Not preventing Nathan and Rebecca's plan, but ensuring that the next generation would have the opportunity to choose better. Zoe would grow up knowing that money is a tool, not an end. That family means support and love, not exploitation and greed. The roses in my garden were blooming beautifully, now tended by an excellent gardening service I could afford without worry. The house felt peaceful, protected by security systems and legal documents that ensured my independence. I began this story talking about a failed poisoning at my retirement party, but it was really about something much more important. The difference between being old and being powerless. I may be 72, but I was far from powerless, and anyone who tried to test that theory would learn, as Nathan and Rebecca did, that underestimating a clever older woman is a very costly mistake. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply to live well and ensure that those who tried to hurt you don't enjoy the fruits of their plans. I had accomplished that, and I would sleep soundly knowing. After all, at my age, a good night's sleep is worth more than all the money in the world. The fact that I had both was just a bonus.